Think it's time to go to the danger zone, Matt. Got my mustache ready. Are you wearing a mustache?
You do have a... I always have a mustache. But you have an aviator mustache now. My lumberjack mustache has no credibility in this environment.
To the danger zone.
Golly,
the amount of smoke in that video. Wow. All right. It's time to talk about Top Gun Maverick. What do you think?
I loved it. I seriously, I didn't care at all that movie was coming out because everybody loved the first one. I wasn't allowed to see it because of how I did childhood. And then, I don't know, when I finally did see it, I was like, hey, that's fine, I guess. Okay. This thing comes out, and I'm like, well, you know, maybe a little nostalgia or whatever. I'll give it a try. I went in with no expectations, and I loved it. Instant classic. One of my all-time favorite movies immediately, and I am picky. I loved it. You?
I thought it was great, man. You know, you have to suspend belief on a couple of things. Like, one of my favorite lines is, oh, it's a GPS-denied environment. The F-35 can't go in there. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm with you. Let's go. We have to use F-18s. Got it. You know, and typically there's a little hint of, well, actually guy in the back of my head that's like, actually, they made it.
You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, no, I'm not that guy. And so when they said that, I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely we can't use F-35 in a GPS-denied environment. Duh. Also, that's kind of why it was made. But anyway, that's how we got to kill the baddies. F-18s all the way. Let's go. And I really
feel
liked
like
it.
there are other options.
Oh,
but I didn't care either.
I didn't care either at all. I was just like, let's go, because this is the only... I think that the movie did a really good job of setting up the challenges, and it was just really good storytelling. It's like, hey, we've got to do this thing, but here's an obstacle we must overcome first. And we might not be able to overcome the obstacle. So it set up the challenge and then figured out how it was going to be dealt with. I thought it was really good storytelling, and I don't really care that the parts of it weren't accurate or anything like that, but I thought it was amazing.
But the thing about overcoming the hard challenge was that the hard challenge wasn't the enemy, the generic unnamed country that is a problem that has jets. The real obstacle course was the human heart.
It was.
Each character had a problem, and they had to overcome that problem or grow in some way through the influence of a mentor. Yeah. Nobody grew apart from a mentor. Everyone who changed had someone else invest in their life who sees their weakness, cares about them anyway, persists through the obstacles and barriers that person who's resistant to change puts up. They care about them through it. They persevere. They get through it. And the changes that need to be made to slay the dragon within get made. And then, and only then, are you ready to slay the dragon without. And I tell you what, it's pretty hard to screw that story up.
You know, I did not think about it that way, which is why I like talking to you, Mr. Humanities. I'm thinking about tail hook dynamics and missile trajectories and stuff like that. But at the same time, the storytelling brought me in, and I didn't know why. When you articulate it that way, it makes sense. That is what happened, isn't it?
Yeah, I think before we talk about any more specifics, we should tell people we're going to talk about specifics. And if you want to go watch it, maybe you can go watch it and then come back. You definitely should. You recommend it, right?
Yeah, definitely go watch the movie. You can listen to this if you want. There's just going to be a bunch of spoilers, but highly recommend that you watch the movie. And I think you'll enjoy what we're going to talk about a little bit more. I think we're actually going to get some F-18 pilots on here, right?
I got one and you got one.
I think it's going to be fun.
Does everybody know an F-18 pilot? Because we talked about doing this episode. I was like, dude, you got to see Maverick. It's amazing. And then you shaved into an aviator mustache and put on aviators and went and saw it. You agreed the thing's good, or at least you gave me that impression. We don't talk about these things off mics because we're saving everything. And then both of us were like, I got an idea. 1, 2, 3, go. We should call my F-18 pilot friend. Like, oh, I guess we both have one of those. I just wonder, like, are there enough of those that everybody just has an F-18 pilot friend? I don't know. Maybe we're just privileged. But yeah, we got 2.
I have a friend who has just a very short amount of time before he has to go to a big meeting or something. I don't even know. But anyway, long story short, if we want to talk to him, we can talk to him like right now. And I mean, he's an F-18 pilot, and that is a major jet in the movie. What do you think?
Let's just do that, and then we'll talk about movie after we get that. We don't want to miss on that window.
Yeah, so let's go talk to him, and then we'll come back and we'll talk movie. Let's go. Revving up your engine, listen to it howl and roar. Metal under tension, begging you to touch and go. Highway to the right into the danger zone.
Squealy guitar.
Okay, Matt, are you there?
Yeah.
I see what you did, and it's confusing, but also yes.
Yeah, you're both named Matt, which is what makes this
boy.
fun. Yeah. Okay, so Matt Whitman is the guy I do a podcast with, and Matthew Dominic is an F-18 pilot, or I don't know. How do you say it now?
Oh, I thought Matt was your call sign. I get it now.
Negative call sign.
No, so Matthew Dominic, you're just a cool dude. So when I'm driving around and I have time to burn, I call you guys, but you don't know each other, so that makes this fun. So there you go. So how do I do this? Can I just use your call sign? Should we just say that, Pojo?
Call sign?
I'm trying to figure out how to keep this conversation straight, and it makes me, I don't know how to do it. So
I mean, my call sign's great, but it opens up a can of worms.
Okay, sounds good. So the way call signs work, as I understand it, is you do something that is kind of dumb or something that people are making fun of you about, and they end up sticking that on you in the form of a call sign. But it's a word you can say out in front of everybody, but it actually means something. It has multiple meanings. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's valid. I think there's some differences in culture across the services, but in the Navy, I think, you do this thing that most of the general public considers pretty cool, right? Yeah, obviously they made a movie about it, Top Gun Maverick, right?
Yeah.
And you get to do these crazy cool things. And it's kind of a humbling thing, right? A lot of the call signs in the Navy, if you actually know what they stand for, they're pretty, the fact that somebody's calling you that makes, kind of steps you down. You know what? Somebody calls me this. Like every day, somebody calls me this. And it's just kind of a humbling little thing, right?
That's fun.
Yeah.
So, Matt Whitman, what do we want to ask Matt Dominic about Top Gun Maverick? We've got all the questions, right?
I guess so. I mean, I just want to know if you liked it, or is it too close for comfort, and so it's like, I don't know. I just can't get into something like that.
Absolutely loved it, and I think for a lot of reasons. But it was. I think it was a good balance between reality and suspending reality for the sake of entertainment. Right? There's a balance there. I mean, there's some things in the movie that are just wildly unrealistic.
Like what?
Like what? Of course. I think for both sides. So that kind of ingress to the target area is a bit antiquated, right? That was a valid tactic many years ago. I mean, it still is a method, but it's not probably the go-to thing for that kind of scenario. But on the other side, for like extreme accuracy, the Super Hornet is limited to 7.5 Gs. Right? When you're pulling half from the stick, it's got a digital flight control system that limits you. You keep pulling for more, but the flight control surfaces aren't going to deflect further. Then we'll give you 7.5 Gs. And so in the movie, they had to go beyond that. And there's just a really quick snippet. And the keen eye would be watching, and as Tom is pulling to get more than 7.5 Gs, you see his hand reach down the stick and to another switch. And that switch does exist, and that does disable the 7.5 G flight control limit for the Super Hornet. So that kind of detail was really, really fast. Like it was like one of those quick cuts. But for those from that community, it's kind of cool that they included that. So if you want to break 7.5 Gs, you have to go see that. It's something you would only do in an emergency.
Awesome. So they made that just for you, basically, and people like you.
I think so, right? Like they worked with, I wasn't in that group, but they worked with the Navy pretty closely, and obviously they flew in the aircraft to see that. So that stuff is super cool that they include that. And then there were other things that I watched it and I thought, oh man, that's movie magic. That's CGI or that's an effect. And then I found out later it was actually real. I was shocked. Like, for example, the super low flyby with when he's in the theoretical hypersonic aircraft on takeoff, and he buzzes the admiral on takeoff, who's standing there at the end of the runway, and the shack, there's like the guard shack, and the roof blows up.
Yes.
From what I understand in my brief research on the internet afterwards, I thought that was like a hydraulic arm that was just timed to blow it up, or like a pyrotechnic charge. When I watched the movie real time, but I found out that actually was what happened. That actually occurred, and they destroyed the set with that slow flyby.
Really?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, that made me super happy.
That airplane, the supersonic aircraft at the beginning, that's supposed to be I'm actually drinking coffee out of an SR-71 Blackbird coffee cup right now, but there was an aircraft that he was flying. What was that supposed to be? It was a Skunk Works Lockheed Martin aircraft. Is this supposed to mean something? Does that thing exist?
I think no, it does not exist. I think from what I've read after with it, Skunk Works, which is a very famous aircraft developer in the world of crazy cool airplanes, U-2 and the SR-71. I think they actually were contacted, and they actually designed it for the movie, right? Like, they designed a fake airplane for the movie, which I think is super cool. But it's stimulating. Hey, Tom Cruise is, he was a Top Gun instructor in the original movie, and now at this point in his career, he's in the test world. He's a test pilot, and he's testing a new aircraft. And I think that's stimulating. And he gets called back to Top Gun instructor. And in that world of the Navy, there's a test world where they test new stuff and get it ready to go to the fleet. There's also a tactics department in the Navy, and that's kind of your Top Gun. The Top Gun manages your current tactics, and they kind of receive new tools and toys from the test world. So maybe he had gone, I guess, the storyline he had been in the test world.
Which is something you were in.
Oh, yes.
So Matt Whitman, Matt Dominic tested a bunch of carrier landing stuff back in the day, and I kind of lived the test community stuff, and so I don't know anything about testing aircraft like he did, other than like handling qualities and maneuverability and things like that. There's all types of things to quantify things, like handling qualities. Usually use something called Cooper Harper, which I know, Pojo, you have opinions about that, which we won't talk about. But Whitman, do you have any questions for Pojo about how to test a carrier landing?
How long is that relative to if you were just landing on a normal runway, the deck of an aircraft carrier? What do you have to work with?
There's a lot more stuff to work with. Obviously, stuff's moving. And so on a runway, when you're landing on a runway, and that's a good question. There's so many places I could go with this. What is testing on the aircraft carrier? Why is that different? It really is about the thing that gets most engineering systems in general. If you just ask an engineer to go build some widget for their discipline, it typically will be fine. They're very stonewalled into their discipline, and they're going to build it, and it's going to be great. But its ability to integrate with everything else is where things tend to struggle, and where things tend to break down. So for aircraft carrier testing, somebody might build a widget, but it can't survive a carrier. And so ships have a thing called pitch and roll and heave, which is moving things around, and then plus there's this thing that we probably won't admit publicly, but it does exist, and it's pilot error. So a pilot might land a little hard or a little soft, or with a little left wing down, a little right wing down, a little pitch up, a little pitch down. And there's a bunch of parameters that we use to categorize that type of landing, and we develop the classic flight envelope and say, hey, we need to land on the aircraft carrier within these parameters. The thing will survive. And so they develop like a legitimate flight envelope. I can't remember all the parameters used, maybe 6 or 7 inputs. So it's obviously multi-dimensional. And then we go test out to a 1 in 1,000 case. And so if it's normally distributed, it's like a little bit outside of 3 sigma. And we go slam the aircraft down on the ground at that 3 sigma case. And so I think hit pocket numbers, normal landing lands at about 12 feet per second rated descent vertical. And I think we test out to about 24, 26. And then there's like 6 or 7 other parameters we test to.
So you're landing hard on purpose?
Yes, absolutely. And it hurts.
Really, you feel it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the audio recordings of my cockpit voice after doing that sometimes have been replayed in public places, and I'm not saying the best words.
You're like, oh, darn it, that was difficult.
Rats.
Yeah, or I'm out of breath because it knocked the wind out of me. I think I left 2 airplanes on the runway. We just broke them hard enough that we just kind of shut down the engine and left them there.
Oh, wow. So one thing I thought was really interesting in the movie is there's this moment where they had to bring out the barricade and land in the barricade, this huge net that just basically catches the airplane. That's real, I assume.
Yes, that's very real. That's something we don't do very often, but it is very real. It's something that the landing signal officers in the back of the ship train to talk to airplanes to do. And you want to make sure the airplane's going to make it into that barricade. So you know, if there's any chance that their approach isn't good enough, you wave them off early. That way they can get over the top of the barricade. And typically you want to make sure that's early because, hey, somebody might have some sort of flight control issue. And so their ability to wave off and climb away might be degraded. So you make sure that's early. And then to make sure they roll into it, you don't want them flying into it, they roll into it. You want to land them pretty far aft on the ship, which then puts you in the risk case of hitting the back of the ship. So it's a very narrow envelope to hit. And the persons typically might have a little bit of distress because there's something significantly wrong with their airplane. And all of their means to land them haven't worked. And if I remember right, it's been many years, but I think we have a cut call where we actually have them shut off their engine. Just as soon as they touch down, they actually cut off fuel control to the engine and roll into the barricade. But it's very much a real thing.
I've never flown a fighter jet at all, not even once. So bear that in mind as I ask this question. I haven't even been invited to and turned it down, like really never. And so one of the things that I think about when I picture, like, say, a fighter jet is that it's large and fast. And then I look at that barricade and it looks like some sort of temporary netting to keep people from getting into an area at a concert you don't want them to. What is that connected to that would make it stop, a jet?
It occurs to me that this is really fun for me because I can tell when you, Whitman, are being sarcastic with your tones. And I know that Dominic can't detect that. So
he registered it. I heard it.
Yeah. He's asking, he really means the question. But
yes, I mean the question.
Yeah, but
how does that work? It looks like you just rip through it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I had to go on mute so I could laugh at you. You didn't hear it, but that's what I was doing. So yeah, it's built into the ship design, right? It was designed long time ago. It was built in the ship design. It's been on like every aircraft carrier for, I don't know, ever since we've probably gone to angle deck carriers. And there's these giant things built into the flight deck that have hydraulic arms that lift these up. These big, I think they're called stanchions. Man, it's been a long time. They may be like 15 feet tall, would be a rough estimate. And so they're big, giant hunks of metal pushed up by giant hydraulic pistons. And before you do that, a bunch of people who train to this run out and put these. There's a wire across the top and a wire across the bottom. And they're the same types of wires we use to stop the airplanes with a hook on the ship. So maybe an 1.25 inch diameter braided steel wire on the top and the bottom, and stretched between those is these really, really thick rubber straps, like thick. And so they'll stop the airplane.
I think one of my favorite shots in the whole movie was on one of the landings. It was just B-roll at the beginning of the movie, I think. There was a slow-mo shot of the cable whipping as it was captured. As you could see the wave from the hook tensioning the cable. It was like a slow-mo wave running down the cable like a guitar string. And I thought, man, that was only 2 seconds of the movie, but it was beautiful. And it looks like all the footage of all the landing stuff on the carriers happened at dusk when it was golden hour and everything was beautiful. I think it was shot well. But what stood out to you about the movie? You mentioned the switch for more G's. Were there other things that you were like, man, I really like this? Or maybe something that made your palms a little sweaty?
There was no palm sweat. There was just lots of cheering and laughter. Like, I remember just laughing, and I remember there's the patches on the squadrons are real. Those are like real squadron patches from real Navy squadrons. And so it was cool to see some of the old squadrons I flew with on patches, and my wife was with me, and she kept elbowing me. She's like, look at that squadron. We know a guy in that squadron. And so there's just lots of cheering. And I went to see it with a bunch of friends who were familiar with this community and a bunch of people who've flown in this community. And so that was cool because we could just yell and scream at the theater and have a good time and laugh at the stuff when it was real or when it was fake. But because you mentioned something super nerdy a second ago in the first part of your statement, that wave that you talked about that goes down the cable is real, and it's super cool. Now you're making me feel like I need to go dig up a book. I have a chapter that talks about that wave, and it can actually be a problem. And it's this really cool wave, and there's an equation the Navy has for it. But if you land perfectly on center line, that wave from where the tailhook hits will go outboard to each of where the cable attaches, and then will reflect and come back in and yank on your hook.
Yep.
And so we actually see increased loads on the aircraft if you land perfectly on center line.
Okay, so it's like an additive wave. Oh shoot, it's constructive. What's the term? What's the term when you have a wave in one side and a wave in the other side, and they negate each other? It's like noise canceling, but it's a mechanical thing. You know what I'm talking about? Shoot, it can do the other thing where the two waves add together to give you more amplitude. So you're saying you guys train to land off center of the cable so that you don't get that huge acceleration as it guitar strings on you. Is that true?
Well, I'm going to define we real quick.
Okay.
When you're landing on the ship operationally, like every day, I mean, I actually talked to a buddy of mine who's deployed right now this morning on a ship. No, you land on center line. You were trained to land on center line. That is where you're targeting, any misses, okay. You land on center line. In flight test, we were aware of this phenomenon because we were collecting data in our aircraft with instrument. Our hooks had strain gauges on them. The aircraft had stress and strain gauges on them. And we wanted to understand the effect and see what's the worst case scenario. So maybe we land on center line to see what the worst case load was, because you can go do incredible loads analysis, before you do the testing. The statics are really easy, but it's the dynamic stuff, right? Like that's really hard and really tough to model. And so we noticed, hey, why are these two data points different? Why are these 10 data points different? Oh, well, these two are right on center line, and we saw, the high-speed footage of the wave going out and reflecting back and coming in. So in test, yes. In test, for example, going back to the testing we talked about earlier, I think if I remember right, the limit was about 20 feet left or right at center line for testing. And so we had a test point that we had to hit between 19 and 20 feet off center line.
That's a hard point. Yeah.
I agree. And so we had a lot of tactics. Like sometimes they would go wrap toilet paper around the 20-foot mark so they give you something to target.
Yeah.
But if you landed at 20 feet, 1 inch, you would break your vesting gear system or potentially damage yourself. So it was a pretty narrow test point. You tended to buy it towards 18 and hope you missed it 19.
Let me ask you one thing about the strain gauges on your hook, and then I know you're about to have to go. I'll give Matt the last question. But when you had the strain gauges on your tail hook, I can imagine that you had axial tension was a major one, because as you grab the hook or as you grab the cable, you're trying to translate that force into the airframe. But I can imagine as you slam down on the ground, the act of hitting the hook on the ground would produce a lot of bending moments on the tail hook. So I'm imagining what the dynamic response of those strain gauges looks like in my head, and I'm imagining there's a huge spike of a bending moment when it hits, and then that relaxes as whatever dampeners that are used to keep it on the ground and not bounce. I can imagine there's a relaxation, and then there's a slow, gradual pull. I can imagine that pull gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and then it tapers off. It probably flatlines as the cable is let out by the winch system, whatever that is. Pneumatic, I assume. Steam is what it used to be, right? So
hydraulic.
It's hydraulic?
It's oil.
Okay, so it's like a torque converter. It's shearing oil. Okay, so do you know what I'm asking? I'm just thinking out loud, but can you just walk me through the dynamics of what breaks a tail hook?
First, you said the word imagine like 10 times, and I'm imagining you imagining your engineering brain. And I don't know if I want to go inside your imagination world.
You don't.
But it sounds pretty awesome because you're getting results. We tested, the test points there were really just about the peaks that occurred, and I personally did not get into the dynamics. I would be doing the same guessing that you are. There was some dynamics that occurred. I can't remember specifically that we were concerned about, one of which was if you landed on centerline or not. But I think you're on the right track. Like, there's a lot of complexity there, and we were doing test points where we had, left wing down, right wing down. We had beta on the aircraft when we landed. That's, kind of pointing left, pointing right with the nose. I don't remember, to be honest.
That's a real answer. Maybe I'll just call the Navy and see if they'll let me do a Smarter Every Day on that, because that sounds amazing. All right, Matt.
I can tell you where to go.
Hook me up, man. That'd be great. Matt, you get last question. He's got to go shortly. So,
okay, again, acknowledging that I have never been a fighter pilot at all. It just seems to me that given the technology and everything, you would normally be a lot further away from someone in a combat situation than what is portrayed in these films. Would it ever be possible to find yourself in that kind of proximity to an enemy aircraft as it's portrayed there? Or is that an exaggeration to get both parties on screen at the same time to just make it feel like there's narrative tension?
Oh, boy. There's a lot there. So proximity to a target, yeah, it's possible. How close you are to the target and the threat, that's possible. But, obviously, there are other ways to solve that problem that might be a better choice. So there was definitely some things out of that movie for drama, and I support them because they were entertaining. When they're in the training environment, where they're training to get ready for the mission, the portrayed proximity between the aircraft as they're flying was ridiculously close. We have training rules that define how close we get in training, and that's just to keep you alive in training. In real combat, you're going to get as close as you possibly can. For certain air combat maneuvers, you are going to be really close. So there's a difference in the movie.
So that's not just like a Cold War leftover, like kids who grew up on G.I. Joe. That's how we picture the planes fighting. There would actually be a strategic rationale, even with the technology we have now, to be in that kind of proximity in a certain situation.
Yeah, there are combat situations that would drive you to be that close.
Wow. That's cool.
It's a really long discussion that probably goes beyond what we can talk about on a podcast.
I bet.
Dude, this was great. I know you have a meeting you have to go to that's way more important than this. Thank you for your time.
Come on.
So,
this is pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. Hey, thanks. Appreciate your time, dude. I know you're busy. If people wanted to follow you on Twitter, not that they would, but if they did want to, how would they do that?
I don't even know my @ symbol on Twitter, but yes, I am on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. You'd have to Google it or use other search engine of choice.
I love that answer. You're living right. Something's going right in your life, Matt.
It's an @ something. Start with that.
@ Dominic Matthew. Wait. Your Twitter. Hold on. There's two different. Hold on. I got one of them. Yeah. @ Dominic with a K Matthew. 2 T's.
And a C. Come on. It hits to the movie. There are 2 T's in Matthew.
So
we have that in common.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for your time, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. See ya.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
This episode of No Dumb Questions is sponsored by HelloFresh. You can get HelloFresh by going to HelloFresh.com/IndyQ16 and using the code IndyQ16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. Matt, do you mind briefly explaining what HelloFresh does?
If you've been listening for a while, you know that HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service. If you haven't been listening for a while, now you know that HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service. They got real smart people who understand food and nutrition and like the things that humans need and stuff that tastes good. And they put together beautifully complex but still entirely accessible and cookable meals. And they send you all of the stuff you need to make it. And they send you this beautiful recipe card that anyone, regardless of skill level or experience, can use to make the food and enjoy the meal. How'd I do?
Yeah, you did great. You can get all different kinds of meals, 30 in fact. You can go to the website and select whatever meal you want sent to your house. It'll come to your house, show up right at the door, a little recipe card, the whole bit. It's awesome. And there's the recipes you get to pick from are really, really good. You can even do seasonal recipes like cucumber salad stuffed pita pockets or chicken sausage stuffed peppers or Tuscan spice shrimp. There's so much more you can choose from, but it's really awesome, and you should totally try HelloFresh. So if you want to do that, go to HelloFresh.com/NDQ16 for 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. You're going to eat stuff you've never eaten before. I highly recommend it. We love it, and you should give it a shot.
I like it because I feel good after I eat it, and sometimes when I'm on the run and not eating good food that is prepared very quickly, I pay for it the second I'm done eating it. HelloFresh, I just feel good after I'm done, and I continue to feel good after I eat it. And so I would have thought that everything HelloFresh did would fit into like the fit and wholesome recipes, because they all seem fit and wholesome. But they've got like an extra fit and wholesome recipes list as well. If you're really watching stuff or you're working on a project, getting in shape for something, that do low calorie, carb conscious options. And so if you have been around HelloFresh for a while, but you haven't looked into that, that's worth checking out as well. Again, if you want to get HelloFresh, you can go to HelloFresh.com/NDQ16 and use the code NDQ16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. And of course, when you support the sponsors, you support the show. So thanks to you for doing that. Thanks to HelloFresh for having our backs too.
Yeah, we're grateful. Thank you.
So you said you liked it. Obviously, you're going to like it. Let's start from the top. What did you think of Tom Cruise, without a lot of makeup or anything, just sitting there in the chair, looking like an older gentleman, and thanking you for going to his movie picture that he made?
Oh, but yeah, when you saw it in theaters, there was that little preview where he says thank you. I thought it was good. It felt genuine. It wasn't overly edited. He was clearly very excited that you came to the movie. What I did not know is, was it important for him to be on screen doing that as if to say, this is a thing I did, I own it? I couldn't figure out if he was wanting to take credit for doing the whole thing, but I genuinely felt good that he thanked me for going to watch it in the theater. I thought that was cool. I also thought it was interesting that in the movie theater I went to, the movie theater itself played an ad before that had Nicole Kidman in it, which was his...
Oh, that one's awful.
His ex-wife.
Oh, it's awful.
I was like, why did they do that?
That feeling you get when the lights go down and you see a brand new movie you've never seen before, like Jurassic Park.
Which is now the sixth sequel.
Which is now receiving Social Security benefits.
I just thought that was an interesting thing. But
Indeed.
I like that he said, hey, the G's are real. We actually filmed this in the jet.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
I did too.
I don't know. It humanized it in a way for me, and I thought that was really interesting.
I would like to irritate some people in the third chair. I don't mean to, so I guess I wouldn't like to. I know this will, and I'm going to roll with it anyway. Here's the thing about Top Gun. If one of those movies came out in, 85, 86, 87, it's somewhere in there, right?
Yeah.
And then the sequel comes out in 22, that bookends the cultural flip from cultural fundamentalism. The first movie came out in an era when like Christian religious stuff was like, yo, you better not offend us. Ho, 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 ho. We got things you can say and things you can't say. And Tom Cruise and the people who made Top Gun were tiptoeing around the religious right when they made that movie in the 1980s. They're not tiptoeing around the religious right now. That controlling interest in thought and appropriate words has flipped to something that leans more progressive. And now you tiptoe around a different group of people who are in that position of word authority. And so it is so interesting to me that they made 2 movies in 2 completely different eras about the same subject with the same actors, having to accommodate very different sets of deeply held sensibilities that movies need to be careful not to offend, or you alienate your audience, you don't get money. Both of them were a smashing success. And I feel like the reason he said that thing at the beginning was to be like, this isn't for anybody who's mad. It's just not. It's not why we did it. This movie isn't forever's going to melt down. Like this movie, it's for you. It's for whoever thinks this is fun. We made it for you. So I felt like he was saying, we didn't make it to appease this, some other country, anybody else. Like here's a movie. We hope you like it. And
interesting.
I thought that was very self-aware and refreshing.
So basically, if I understand you correctly, you're saying there wasn't a hidden agenda to the movie to make you feel bad because you think certain things. This is just a fun movie.
Or good. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Just fun.
It's just fun.
Or good because you Yeah, I mean, we make movies in any given era to make one group of people feel really, really good about how right they are at a given time, and the other group of people is bad. And good guy, bad guy, it's how storytelling works. I understand why people do it. You can always lick your finger and put it to the air and figure out who right now is this person's likable, that person's bad. It's very, very easy and simplistic. And I just like that in both movies, the telling detail of what they were thinking about trying to make this a universally appealing hero's journey story that anybody could like is that the bad guy in both movies is the enemy. Like, who were they at war with in Top Gun? Oh, the enemy. Well, what are they fighting? MiGs. Oh, Russian MiGs? MiGs. And here we're invading that land area where the enemy is, whose face you never see. We're not fighting China. We're not fighting Russia. We're not fighting Muslims. We're not fighting anybody. It's just watch the movie.
By the way,
have fun.
You can kind of triangulate who the enemy is by the fact that they're flying a 5th generation fighter. Number one, they have a Hind Russian attack helicopter. That's one thing that was interesting. But they also have F-14s. And there's one country that would have all those things. You know what that is?
Canada.
Yes, it's Canada. That's it.
I knew it.
Fighting Canada. No, I think it's Iran.
Canucks.
I think Iran has those things. I think they still have some working F-14s. I thought it was interesting. Spoiler. When they go and they crash and they get the F-14 and they have to fly back,
I thought wonderful.
I thought it was so good. I thought it was so good. I think my favorite scene in the entire movie is when they crash and they run up to each other in the woods. He's like, "Why did you save me?"
Shoved him over.
He shoved him over. It's like, he said, what were you thinking? He's like, "You told me not to think." I was like, the whole, the whole theater just started laughing. Like, that was such a great, it's well-written moment, right?
And then they chase it with, "Well, it's good to see you." Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. That
that's
was
the
well
breakthrough
written.
moment in the relationship. I love it. Overcome the dragon within, you overcome the dragon without. I loved it.
We both fight for America. Let's get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Chekhov's gun is sitting right there. I have a non-Chekhov's gun sitting over my fireplace right here in front of me. It doesn't shoot. So I know it's not going to come into play. But theoretically, if you walk into a room in a movie and they show the gun's going to come into play later.
So Rooster is Chekhov's gun. Yeah, absolutely.
No, the F-14's in the briefing with John Hamm. Even some old Cold War relics like these F-14s, zoom in, pause, that nobody will definitely ever get into. That'd be ridiculous. I could even imagine a scenario in which someone would be in one of those, let alone you. Anyways,
I did like the moment where they get in the F-14 and Rooster goes, "The wings are moving. What's up with that?" Yes. He's like, "Hold on, it's a short runway. Let me do this thing." I built an F-14 when I was a kid. It was one of the advanced models that you put together that was a snap-together model, and the wings would actually move. And I had like the little tiger teeth on the front of the F-14, the Tomcat. I loved it. I loved it so much. And the fact that they moved the wings out on the F-14, it's like this thing that every little aviation geek kid knew was a thing, and everybody wanted to see that. And they wrote a reason into the movie for that to happen. I was like, thank you for doing that for me. You did that exactly for me. That was so great.
That's what Tom Cruise said at the beginning. He said it was for you, and it was for you. He knew who you were.
Okay, so Tom Cruise, like, as a celebrity, kind of weird, right? But he nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. That movie was great.
I like him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like him. He is weird, and I'm fine with my movie stars being weird and my rock stars being weird. I want my politicians to be normal. But look, I probably don't agree about much of anything in terms of view of planet Earth or God or the soul or anything with Tom Cruise. But dude's just likable. Like, he seems like a kind, empathetic guy, or at least someone who can fake it. And that's what you want in an actor. Make me feel stuff. Yeah, Tom Cruise is weird, but I sure like him on screen.
So at 60 years old, do you think you're going to be doing shirtless football scenes on the beach, all oiled up and stuff?
Well, I'm doing that now, just nobody's watching it. Those videos have not performed particularly well.
Have you transitioned to wearing shirts when you're at the pool and stuff? Have you done that yet?
It depends on the season, man. This is what I have noticed about 40. Winter, it used to be like, whatever. Winter, summer, whatever. I'm in shape. I lift weights and I work out. Now, the body is like, oh, it's colder. You know what you could use? 7 pounds of gelatinous fat. There you go. You know what'd be great? Is if you looked horrible in a t-shirt for about 4 or 5 months out of a year instead of just mediocre in a t-shirt. So we're doing that starting right now at Christmas. Like, what? Come on. And then it gets better by like September. I go look at videos that I shoot of myself in September. I'm like, that guy's unattractive, but he's fit. What the heck happened? It's only 6 months ago. So yeah, no.
Tara and Tara loved the movie. She said, she's like, that was fun. She said, it's rare that you watch a sequel that ties up a lot of the storylines that were left open in the first movie, but it does it in a way that's fun. And I was like, you're absolutely right. Also, Tom Cruise on the beach. Is he like drinking the blood of infants or what? How is he staying so young?
He was Lestat interviewing a vampire man. Like, maybe he learned something on that set. Anne Rice told him, I don't know. But seriously, it's him and Tom Brady and Keanu Reeves. They're in some kind of coven, or I don't know what they're doing, but it ain't right. They have made a deal that they will pay for later.
They're just, you got some pictures of Dorian Gray thing going on or something. So
fine reference.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel about the Val Kilmer sequence?
Oh, that was what I liked about that is it broke the fourth wall. And so it said to the viewers, like, hey, Val Kilmer is a legend, and he's an American actor that just has contributed so much. Tombstone, come on now, right? And
Mardigan, Willow.
Yeah, he's done so much, and he hasn't had a major scene in a really long time because of his illness. And the fact that they wrote the scene specifically to give him that part, and he contributed. I mean, it was I thought he did a really good job acting in the movie. I don't know. I just really appreciated it. It was a human moment that transcended the movie, and that added tremendous value to me. You? What do you think about it?
It was so soft-hearted, and Tom Cruise's performance in that, both of those guys, that's as fine a 5-minute sample of Tom Cruise's performance as I've ever seen. You're not seeing him doing anything physical. He's there. The camera is on him.
Running like this?
Yes. He's not doing that, yes. Though we did get that run. My run is a less attractive version of that. It's not based on him, but I've been told, like, if Tom Cruise were out of shape and ran even uglier, it would be what I do. It ain't pretty. So he does that. Yeah, he does that stuff. But in that shot, Tom Cruise is framed in the diminutive position. He's the mentee, and he's in the position of weakness, camera up, looking down. Val Kilmer is framed in the mentor position, camera down, looking up. And I love the fact that he didn't have to say anything. I want to talk about work. Oh, come on. Come on, Ice. I don't want to talk about work. And the mentor in this situation, without hardly a word, forces this guy who, I mean, it didn't work out for Maverick. The Maverick style, that's what we all idealized in the 70s and the 80s. Up yours, everything. It was cute. It was fun. But this movie, without rebuking and repudiating a character we loved, acknowledged, that just only goes so far. He's alone. He's hurt. He's socially well-adjusted. He knows to smile when they throw him out of a bar. Like, don't fight and be an idiot. He's learned his lessons, but he's dinged up. That lifestyle, it leaves you empty in the end. And Iceman, who I think we were supposed to imagine was the bad guy initially, he was never the bad guy. He was right about everything in the first Top Gun. And apparently, that approach that he took, it made him not just powerful and authoritative and successful, but it made him tender and empathetic to people he didn't have to show compassion toward. I just love the way they rounded out the character.
Yeah, I thought it was good. There was an editorial note that I had, or decision, we'll call it that. So I edit video, you edit video, and we both make decisions to leave our foibles in, right? We decide, hey, I'm going to edit this in such a way where I don't look smart or I look whatever. Those are active decisions we get to make. We could easily edit things to make us, better in whatever way we want. I thought the decision when Rooster finally confronted Maverick and they got face to face and they were looking at each other and it was a stare down for just a second, They cut to camera right, or whatever. I don't know what directions are. They cut to the camera right beside them, and you could see that Tom Cruise was much shorter than Rooster.
Mm-hmm.
They made that decision to put that shot in, and obviously Tom Cruise had a say in whether or not that shot went in, and they kept it in. And I thought that was really smart. I was trying the whole time. I was trying to decide: is this movie about making Tom Cruise look good and feel good? And then, but they made shots like that in there that I thought were just really good, really clever.
One of the ways the movie affected me is that scene I just referenced. The joke's on you. You did a thing that's against the rules. You're a fish out of water. You put your phone on the bar. Well, one, I've been working really hard on not putting my phone on the bar. Since November, I've been trying to make a very conscious effort that the phone isn't on the table if I eat with people. It's just not there, not picking it up, not doing it. You made the time to be with me. The phone is gone. Someone who has not made the investment doesn't get to interrupt our time. I don't know how well I do at it, but that's what I'm trying to do. So I thought it was fun. Like she doesn't want phones on the bar, in her bar. That's reasonable. Oh, she's got rules. You got to pay a price. Oh, it's kind of like camp. Like this is how you build camaraderie. And it's why there's a lot of hazing that you want to clean up. But if you completely eliminate all hazing and inside jokes and all of that, you're going to lose something. There's a collegiality that is born out of ribbing each other to a healthy extent. And I loved the fact that they had their little ritual at the, whatever they called it, the flight deck, the hard deck was the name of the place. And she had him thrown out. And what does he do? He doesn't get fussy and swing like, get off me. Do you know who I am? He just smiles and plays along. He's like, this is part of the fun for everyone. It's my turn to play this role. Throw my butt out into the sand. I'll dust off. We'll have a laugh. I'll come back and I'll pay you later. That is so instructive. And my instinct when it's happening to me is to try to look cool. Pete, Maverick, Mitchell knew don't look cool, just take it. That is the right play in this situation because this is reasonable hazing and this is happening to you because you are included. Smart.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed that. Also, I thought it was interesting. I was thinking in the movie, wow, a world without cell phones. Nobody's like over in the corner just scrolling Instagram. Everybody's in the moment. And so when they went into the instruction class for Top Gun, I don't know if you noticed it. There was a no cell phone sign on the
I didn't see it
on the door. It was in red, if I recall. So they had that on there. The only time a cell phone was used in the movie was when Maverick was talking to Iceman, and I assume that was written into the movie because of Val Kilmer's condition, where it's very difficult for him to talk. That was interesting. I like that.
So they had two things that said, get rid of your stupid phone, and only one thing where narratively they needed to use it because Val Kilmer just physically can't speak right now. So having him text was a natural story beat.
When he spoke in the movie, did they have a voiceover added to that? Or I don't know what his medical condition is. Do you?
I'm unsure. I just watched his, I don't even know what you call it. He made a documentary about himself and his career and his fading health called Val. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's as quirky as he is. I wanted to watch it because there's a couple things.
Throat cancer.
Super loved him in. Yeah, and so he's on a robot to communicate at this point. So I don't know if they had him do that off camera and sync it up or how they pulled it off exactly, but it worked.
Yeah, it did. Very interesting. He's wearing a scarf a lot of time. I wonder if that's covering up. I had a little league coach that had throat cancer. His name was Mr. Brown, and he was awesome. And he had a stoma, a hole in the bottom of his throat. And he could hold his finger up to the stoma, and he could talk. Kenny Brown was his name. He's amazing. Really cool dude. Really good.
He had to cover it to make it work?
Yes. He would touch a little plastic piece that he had over his stoma, which is the hole in his throat down here, and we called it the cancer kazoo. And he said when he would go to talk, he would have to hold this thing just right, and then he would talk like this, and you could hear him talking like this. And so he would get mad at us, rightfully so. We'd do something wrong, and he would run out there, and he'd stick his finger up to his cancer kazoo, and he's like, I've never in all my life seen boys that were just as sorry as you. And he would just scream at us. And then in a moment, like as a 14-year-old boy, you were struck by the strangeness of the moment. Also, man, those were some of the most serious times I've ever been chewed out. Also, he was really fun. If it was a very tense moment in the game, he would walk out to the mound and call all the baseball players to the mound. He'd give everybody a piece of bubble gum. He was just a cool dude. And I need to check in with him. He's an awesome guy. So I'm assuming something like that's going on. And so I was wondering if in the moment they had his lips move and they had a voice actor provide voice to that, or they did it with some type of AI or something like that. Long story short, I was really excited that Val Kilmer was in the movie, and it meant a lot to me on multiple levels.
Agreed. And from a narrative perspective, do we care about what happened to Iceman? Sure. Yeah, he factored prominently in this beloved film from the 80s. But what I liked most about it was clearly the people who had stayed connected and who made connections on this set when they were kids. They stuck up for each other. They're like, he needs to be a part of this. It's not right if Val's not a part of it. We got to find a way. And I know Kelly McGillis tapped out. I think McGinnis.
I don't think she was asked.
I had heard that she was, and just was like, I'm not sure I want to push the buttons that I'm going to have to push to get myself in a position where that makes sense. I don't know. I'm not sure which is true. Whatever the case, I've seen some people being kind of mean about the fact that she aged on the internet. And I just don't think that's fair. Tom Cruise made a deal with the devil. He's going to look like he's 45 until the end of time. That lady was a movie star and had a great young life. And then, I don't know, probably went and got a family. And like now she's aged like people do. And it's fine. It's cool. Like, good for her. That's awesome. But I like that they figured it out. I like that they structured the story in such a way that reality paralleled the show, and that they like Tara said very astutely, they completed the arc. And what I think made this show, one of the things that made it work, is all the arcs got paid off. Everybody had a problem internal to themselves. Some of it was reflected even in their call signs, like Hangman. And everybody also had something they brought to the table. There is an enemy. It doesn't matter who the enemy is. That's not just a political move to say the enemy, because the enemy is you. The enemy is our own weaknesses, our own insecurity, our own frailty, the mistakes, guilt, the things that nip at our heels, whatever it is for all of us. And they all had a thing they needed to overcome, and they all did. And the little touches, like even having a character named Phoenix rise from the ashes, like, good job just seeing that through. It's those little things, the little extra bits in the writing that round it out and caused me to say, all right, you took the time to be careful with these characters and have them all do what they needed to do. And so every single character is an inspiration.
I got worried when I saw Phoenix first appear on the screen. I don't know what this says about me, but I'm like, oh man, okay, she's here. Are they going to make this about some type of empowerment thing? Oh, like, how weird is this going to get? Oh no. Mm-hmm. And then she's just an awesome fighter pilot. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
There was and I think that was more powerful to me. It's like, hey, Phoenix, can you save the day? I need you to hit the target. And Phoenix was like, on it, got it, done.
Yes.
Don't have
because of character and competence.
Yeah, I'm just really good at being a fighter pilot. That's all you need to know. Exactly. That is all I need to know. I just need a wingman that can just knock it out and be done. Yes. So it was great. I loved it.
I love storytelling, and I got another 2 hours of shooting the breeze with you about this, but I told my buddy Pete to let me know when he was available, and he has let me know that he's available. So what if we jump over to another person who flies these kind of jets and talk with him?
I would love that. Thank you. This episode of No Dumb Questions is sponsored by RAYCON. That is RAYCON, Romeo Alpha Yankee Charlie Oscar November. You know that, Matt? That's the phonetic alphabet I did there.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you've heard of that? Yeah.
I've heard that people use it.
Yeah. So
sailors and stuff.
RAYCON is a set of really cool earbuds that you can use. They're wireless. They have this little charging pill that you can put in your pocket. They're everyday carry kind of things. And the cool thing about Raycons is they don't cost an incredible amount of money. They're cost effective and a high quality product. So if you want to try them, go to buyraycon.com/NDQ and get 15% off your order.
I'm particularly fond of the sound profile. It is a great match for how I listen to music. And as we've discussed before, this is one of those things that, along with the keys and the phone/wallet, you just throw it in the pocket and you got all the things that you need for the rest of the day. It's become that sort of regular part of my rhythm thing. You got 8 hours of playtime, and then each time you recharge the earbuds in the little pod, the little pill, that's 32 hours total of life to your earbuds that you have just hauling around with you in your pocket, which is fantastic.
How many people do you think are listening to Raycons right now, Matt?
I can think of 5 very quickly who I know listen to all their podcasts on Raycons now.
Oh, yeah.
So more than 5?
So
sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
So you've given to Raycons to people and they're using them?
Oh, yes, I have. Hey, person who's on Raycons. Yeah, you right there. The one. You're jogging. I see you right now. Check this out on your Raycons.
No, I have an idea. Let's have a Raycon test. Hey, I'm in the left Raycon now. Do you think the left one sounds better?
I'm actually in the right Raycon right now, and I think you'll notice that in addition to just sounding really good, also my voice, because of the thickness of my beard, comparable to Destin's, like that comes through. That matters.
I don't know. I think the bass on the left side sounds way better.
You and I define bass differently.
That's fun.
I don't know what we're doing.
I don't either.
The point is this. You guys are smart. You know how the internet works. This is the kind of medium that happens because you like it and you jump in and you get behind it to make it go. And one of the best ways to do that is to support the sponsors. I know tons of you have. We've got a ton of great feedback. So if you want to get a pair of Raycon earbuds, you can do that by going to buyraycon.com/NDQ. You get 15% off your order. And again, we're just thankful to all of you supporting the program and thankful for Raycon for the long-term partnership we've had with them.
Hey there.
Pete Johnson.
Matt Whitman, how's it been?
Pretty good, man. You sound nothing like the last time we talked. I'm
No.
going to bring Destin in. Here you go. One sec. Destin, Pete, Destin. Got everybody?
I'm here.
What's up, Pete? How's it going, man?
Good, Destin. Good to talk to you. Big fan of your show, of your podcast. Your YouTube channel, and both of your podcasts.
Awesome. Well, we're a big fan of FA-18s. Do I say FA-18s or just F-18?
I just call them F-18s. I flew F-16s my whole career in the Air Force, so we just call them F-18s or Hornets.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. So there's a Hornet. Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good.
You and I grew up on the G.I. Joe, what did they call it? Sky?
Gosh.
I don't know. That must have been a 14, right?
I think so. Now that I think, I never actually thought back to that. I think my first taste of any of that was the Top Gun NES game, where the hardest thing you could do was to refuel.
Dude, did you know that in that game, if you just point the nose of your plane at the sky, you can fly through the entire game, and all you'll ever have to do is refuel and land on that impossible. I mean, it's impossible to land. You're gonna smash into the front of the carrier every single time.
Sure.
You don't have to ever fight anyone in the whole game if you want.
Over it all. It's fantastic. Well, those are like the two hardest things in the game anyway, was to refuel and land on the boat. So, yeah.
I don't know if that game was combat accurate, but if it is, somebody should tell the Air Force.
Just to fly over the top of everything.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
It'll work. Oh, goodness.
Okay, let me officially introduce the two of you here, because this is an interesting social situation. Because the last time I talked to Pete, his voice sounded like a small boy because we were both kids. We've corresponded, we've texted, we've said hi, but I don't know what your adult voice sounds like. So it's really fun. I like your adult voice. I think you sound great.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm familiar with yours. You have a podcast or two, but yeah, I didn't think about the other direction of that dynamic.
It works out pretty well. So our mutual friend Adam was like always giving me updates on what you were up to, and so I feel like I've followed your career from a distance and kind of had a sense of all of your adventures. And well, then Destin and I decided that we're going to get on here and talk Top Gun. I'm like, oh, I know a dude. Finally, the proper social excuse to connect with Pete. So now I want to try the introduction again. Now that Destin knows that this is kind of a reunion for me too. Destin Sandlin of the internet. This is Pete Johnson of Fort Collins, Colorado.
Pleasure to meet you, Pete Johnson of Fort Collins, Colorado.
Likewise, Destin of the internet. And
I felt felt like I was better positioned to make the introduction the second time. So thank you both for playing along. Pete, what was your call sign?
Swingin' Johnson, which I was given that in 2003, and I don't know that it would be something that they would do in 2022. But I managed to hold on to it my whole career. There was a few attempts down the road that Big Air Force was cracking down on call signs that were less than appropriate or less than inclusive. Mine was always on the borderline there, but I just kind of managed to always dodge anything like that. But I will say if I was going to have continued further in my career, like past 20 years, it would have definitely been one of those that gets kind of redone. There's like some colonels out in the Air Force that have, like, you knew a guy when he was like a captain or a major from way back, and then you run into him again and he's a colonel and he's got a new call sign that's something totally different and definitely a lot more PG. That would have been me if I'd stuck it out.
So why was your call sign inappropriate? I'm not sure I really understand what's weird about it.
Swingin' Johnson is the euphemism for like every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Like, oh, every swingin' out there. So that's how that ended up. So, like most Air Force call signs, they're not. It's not something you ever get to pick, and the harder you protest, the worse it gets for you. So
the worse it sticks to you. That makes sense. So you're an F-16. So you're a Viper driver.
That's right. Until about a year ago, I retired last April, 2021.
How many years in?
20 years. 20 years on the nose.
Okay, so this is interesting because, to my knowledge, the Air Force doesn't have an equivalent movie to Top Gun. So Top Gun is the naval aviator crowd. You know, they love it, right? And so sure. I would like to know what the Air Force, you know, somebody that's a Viper driver that's been in the Air Force for years, what is your opinion of Top Gun? And is there some jealousy there because they got their awesome movie and there's not one called, like, you know, Advanced Weapon School or something like that? What's the external view of that?
So first and foremost, I have not seen the new Top Gun movie to date. I fully intend to, but I've seen the trailers going back to pre-COVID, right when the trailers came out. I was all in, and I love the original. I still watch it probably once a year, maybe every 2 years, but it's a fantastic film. You're correct. The Air Force has no equivalent. They have Iron Eagle with Doug Masters, which is just like that's farm team compared to the Top Gun. Cool flying. It's got F-16s in it, but for every bit that the original Top Gun, you know, lacked in maybe absolute technical realism, I mean, Iron Eagle is, you know, so far away and not exciting. I do not watch Iron Eagle every year or every decade. So yeah, I kind of wish the Air Force would have something like that. I don't know that there's a whole ton of rivalry. I think it just motivates people. It's got fast jets in it and all the machismo, all the testosterone. Yeah, if the Navy's got the lock on that, then that's fine. But it's still a really cool, motivated movie, at least the original, and I expect a sequel also. I've talked to a lot of friends from F-16 days and just Big Air Force. Not a one has had a bad thing to say, just overwhelmingly positive. I talked to a friend yesterday, and if anyone was going to be critical of the movie, it'd be him. And he said he went in with pretty low expectations and just blew his expectations out of the water, and he loved it. So I'm just all that much more excited to go see it.
If it's any consolation, I think your chapel is way better than the Navy's.
I haven't seen the Navy chapel, but the Air Force Academy chapel is pretty cool.
Point proven. And that concludes everything I bring to a discussion about the United States military. That was all I had. I look at the chapels. That's what I got.
No. So let me ask you about this. What it's my understanding that, well, I know that in a Viper you guys wear the G suit. They don't do that in a Hornet. Is that correct?
Hornet pilots still wear a G suit. The Blue Angels, to my knowledge, do not wear a G suit. I've heard some speculation as to why, so I can't speak as though I'm an expert. I'm not a Blue Angel. I don't know any current Blue Angels personally. I believe the G suit was interfering a little bit with their like fine motor control of the control actuator, the stick for the G suit. And they actually did have a mishap at an air show or an air show practice within the last decade, and I think they did attribute that to a G-induced loss of consciousness. I don't know if that's changed what they do. I don't believe so. But generally, yeah, Hornet pilots, Marine and Navy will still, to my knowledge, still wear G-suits.
Did you ever experience G-lock?
I did not. Of course, we have the centrifuge you go to at the beginning of your jet training, and that'll get you pretty close to it. They have a specific profile tailored to what airplane you're going to go fly next. And they want you to actually.
Wait, what do you mean centrifuge? Is that like the ride they used to have at Old Elitch's in Denver, where they just put you in the thing and it squishes you against the wall?
It's like that, but way better. From Spies Like Us, it's kind of like that. So it used to be at Holloman Air Force Base in southern New Mexico, is where they had it. They've since moved it. I think it's in Ohio now. But yeah, it's a large room, maybe 100 feet across, maybe a little more. It's probably way easier to Google it and see a picture of it. But yeah,
I think it's actually at Wright Pat.
I think it is at Wright Pat now, yeah. And there's a little tiny cockpit mock-up. It's not built for fidelity's sake. It's just supposed to be like a seat. There's no windows in it either. There's just a stick. It's a binary stick. You pull back on it, and it actuates the machine. So you're actually in control of starting and stopping this thing.
That's amazing.
And they tell you the control room, they program in like, hey, you're going to do a 7G profile. And they have video monitoring of you, and they can talk to you through speakers to your little box there. And you go in the centrifuge, and they actually give you a videotape later on, which is pretty cool. You can see your face all squished up. But they give you feedback. Pretty common mistake is, air exchanges when you're doing the breathing specific to the anti-G stream maneuver. Your air exchanges are too fast or too shallow, for example. And they give you real-time feedback. And the whole goal of it is to make sure that you can go out and fly an airplane and not lose consciousness. But they'll tell you, like, most people's first symptom, if it's not super rapid onset, is either they lose their color vision, is a little bit for me, or tunnel vision. Like, you'll start losing your peripheral vision as the G's creep in. So,
watching this new Top Gun movie, there was a bunch of stuff where Tom Cruise's face got real soggy, and I was like, oh, like, he's actually feeling some of that. That's cool. And as I was watching that, I was thinking, man, what if that were me? I thought, like, if I'm not actively lifting, I bet I'd really feel that in the nipples. I wouldn't want to do that unclothed. There'd be like a really unflattering compression. Where else do you most feel the G's other than your facial cheeks?
While you're doing it, your neck over time. Usually you're not looking straight ahead out the front window or the front of your canopy whenever you're pulling G's. You're, looking off to the side, or sometimes you're looking way back over your shoulder towards the tail of your aircraft. So you got to really position your head correctly before you apply G's, because once it's there, you're not going to be able to really move a whole lot. But yeah, like you said, your face, your mask is up, so like your oxygen mask is, keeping your face in place somewhat. But it's not the most comfortable sensation. I wouldn't describe it as painful, but it's certainly not comfortable.
I never thought about that, because most of the time when you're having to pull high G's, so I did get to experience what it felt like, at least some G's, and I was just staring straight ahead trying to survive, but it never occurred to me that you're kind of in a dogfight situation if you're actually having to do that, making a tactical maneuver. So you would be looking over your shoulder, wouldn't you?
Yeah, if you're in an offensive position, which is where you'd like to be, obviously the adversary is going to be in the forward hemisphere, so you shouldn't be having to look over your shoulder too much, but they might be across the turn circle from you, 90 degrees out. We do train a lot, and my last assignment was training at the F-16 schoolhouse. You trained at defensive dogfighting, which starts you out in a defensive position, and then you're supposed to wrangle your way out of it, or at least survive long enough. And that involves high G looking over your shoulder. It's probably one of the less comfortable missions in the syllabus that we train those.
So you've been trained in how to dogfight?
Yes, from a very building block approach. It's actually one of the very first syllabus items you get to in the F-16 syllabus as a student, like takeoff, landing, flying around the airspace. And then once you've got that wired after like 6 flights, your very next 4 flights are offensive dogfighting. I call it BFM, basic fighter maneuvers. And then you'll do 4 more that are defensive, and then you'll do 4 more that are high aspect, which is where you meet 180 degrees out neutral. So yeah, your first dozen tactical rides in the syllabus before you even have 20 hours in the airplane are dogfighting rides. And then once you've demonstrated at least a basic understanding of those concepts and how not to break the training rules, then they move on to more advanced air-to-air concepts.
So I would love for you to explain an OODA loop to me. Like, just tell me what it is, how it works. I think I know, but I've never used it in a tactical situation, and you have. So what is an OODA loop, and how does it work, and all that good stuff?
So that's OODA, OODA, is a academic, almost like thesis level way of describing sort of the feedback process of decision making that happens in tactical aviation, or you can apply it to literally anything else. And John Boyd is one of the legends of fighter aviation, sort of the father of the F-16 for the Air Force. He coined the OODA loop phrase, which stands for observe, orient, decide, act. So take in information, process it and frame it correctly, make a decision, then act on that decision, and then go back to observe and get more information. So that's sort of one way of just describing how we train the students. Like, hey, what is the adversary, the guy you're fighting against, the bad guy? What's he doing right now with his aircraft? You know, what does that mean for you? And then what we teach you to do with that, and then you do it, and then go back to the beginning of the O is the OODA loop. So that's not something that's generally used or talked about within a fighter squadron or in a brief or a debrief. It's just more of a higher level, concept of describing how you process information.
So in World War I, when the Germans started fighting in airplanes, and the British and all them, there was this thing called the turning war. There's a German word for that, and it's like if you could turn tighter and get in behind your person that you were fighting against, you could get the shot on them. To what extent is that true today for fighter pilots when they dogfight? Like, are you constantly trying to maneuver to a point of advantage, and how do you do that? So if you start at a point of disadvantage, how do you get around to a point of advantage?
Sure. That's the basic concept of obviously, you obviously want to get behind the adversary. We train the students initially to start from a position of advantage and how to keep that advantage. And then for a defensive position, how to either neutralize or if they're good at it, to gain a position of advantage. So really it's a question of your turning radius versus your turn rate. And often those two things work in opposition of each other. So
was the stuff that you saw in the first Top Gun, is that laughably absurd in terms of how to gain that positional advantage? Like somebody's chasing you hard, just like hit the brakes as though there's like a brake pedal. Like, is that just kind of good for a chuckle, or strategically, is there any advantage to changing speeds at surprising rates?
Sure. And that's called forcing an overshoot. Obviously the cinematography is phenomenal in the first one, and the trailer for the second one makes me think it's also going to be great. We don't fly even in, simulated aerial combat anywhere that close to each other at all. Like, you're not going to be that close. In fact, during training, we have a 500-foot lateral bubble, you call that. You can't get within 500 feet of the other aircraft, nor would you want to. That's not generally a good tactic if they get that close. We're going to be employing weapons starting inside a half a mile for simulated gun technology. So yeah, hit the brakes and they'll fly right by, and he flies, 100 feet off the edge of the wing. But if you can force an overshoot, i.e., have a tighter turning radius than someone on your tail, and just keep a turn going. If they can't hang or if they can't turn as tight, then your turn radius is smaller. If you can continue your turn rate, as in degrees per second that your nose will track, then you'll ultimately gain a position of advantage. So the theoretical concept is there, but just as far as like smashing the speed brakes and have someone overshoot, if they were that close to you to begin with, then they deserve to have that happen to you. I'm not the guy that watches the original Top Gun and then points out all the glaring flaws, because one, I was 7 years old when it first came out, and I didn't know any better then, and I thought it was amazing then. And it doesn't really matter if there's inaccuracies, because the cinematography would be very difficult to make as compelling if you were to show real airplanes, a mile and a half apart. They'd be like a little speck out there. Yeah,
it would be boring. Nobody wants to watch that. And also, movies, as Destin and I often discuss, are about the human heart, the human mind, and what's going on inside. And if you're not in any kind of meaningful proximity to whoever you're struggling against, there's just something about the subconscious story-consuming brain that says these stakes aren't real. Now we're into just robots and buttons. We're not dealing with actual people. So I get, even from a narrative perspective, why you got to condense all of that action a little bit for how our brains receive story.
Sure.
F-16 versus F-18 dogfight, who wins?
So most people, when you ask that question over any spectrum, are going to say it depends on the pilot, and that's largely true. I would say if you have an equally accomplished pilot in both of those, it kind of depends on the arena. The F-16 is going to be able to sustain its energy a little bit better than the F-18. So
I don't understand what that.
It's lower mass, right?
What does that measure?
Yeah, in terms of wing loading and being able to maintain a higher airspeed and a higher G available, I will say the F-18 has a distinct advantage when it comes to high angle of attack maneuvering, i.e. angle of attack being the angle of the nose relative to the flight path, right? The F-16 is fly-by-wire, and the flight control computer is going to keep you from achieving too high of an angle of attack to keep it from flying out of control. The F-18 certainly has some logic.
By fly-by-wire, you mean that you are actually controlling things? There's actual feedback, or there's simulated feedback on the stick?
So, fun fact, there's no feedback on the stick in the F-16. It's just a force transducer. It doesn't move. Actually, it has about an eighth of an inch of play in it that some of the engineers asked for after the early testing. It's just a force transducer, and it sends an input to the flight control computers that says, hey, here's what the pilot wants the airplane to do. Then the flight control computers will go measure a whole bunch of different parameters, angle of attack, density, altitude, current airspeed, temperature, everything, and then they come up with a pretty good solution on how to affect that. And so then they will move the flight controls. And you don't really get any tactile feedback, nor do you need any in the F-16. It just makes it happen. So if you pulled as hard as you possibly could on the stick, I mean, there is a limit. I forget what the pound limit is, 40 maybe. That's the pull aft stick. And there's no G limiter either, but normally that's going to correlate to about 9 Gs, depending on your airspeed. That's the maximum anyway. And then it'll peg you at a fixed angle of attack until you're below the limit. And then that's about the time your angle of attack or your G starts to fall off. So 9 Gs forever isn't too possible in the F-16 unless you're going a little bit downhill or you're low density altitude. The F-15C and the F-18, they definitely have some computer assist with their flight controls. I'm definitely not an expert on those, but they can fly at much higher angles of attack, i.e. they can maneuver their airplanes a whole lot better than we can at slower airspeed. And so if you want to fight an F-18 or a Hornet in an F-16, just stay fast and don't get slow with them, because once you get slow with them, then they definitely have an advantage. So, you never can tell. You never can tell.
I'm going to remember that next time I find myself in that situation.
You never know. Okay, another question. So with the future of the military, if you follow the money, it seems like DoD is pushing more and more money into uncrewed systems. So you've got some pilot in Nevada somewhere flying an aircraft halfway around the world. We're seeing that for surveillance. We're seeing that for a little bit for drone attacks and things of that nature. For fighters, do you think that there's a future for uncrewed fighter jets? And if so, how does the fighter community think about that? And people that are currently fighter pilots, are they angry about that? Are they cool with it? What's everybody saying?
I think in the fighter world, at least on the Air Force side, it's still too much of an abstraction for anyone to have really passionate feelings about it. And I'm also speaking, one, as a retiree. I've been out of the game for a year now. And two, I was never involved in any sort of test or anything outside of operational F-16. So I can't actually speak to what's down the road other than just the standard grumblings you'd hear about or read about. I think there's probably more of a place emergent in the fighter world for some sort of unmanned or at least AI. I know they've been talking about like agile wingman type stuff, which I think the concept as I understand it would be a manned fighter asset or a manned tactical asset with drone, if you will, or unmanned assets sort of in tow or flying a scripted or programmed formation off of the manned asset. So instead of having, 4 F-16s with 4 warm bodies on the inside, you might have like one fighter asset and it would have a couple unmanned assets flying in formation with it. I think the advantage to that would for sure be just weapons carriage ability. But you're definitely increasing the complexity there. They're only as good as the inputs you would give it. And as I understand it, I think that's kind of where it's going. I don't know that I've heard a lot of discussion yet about completely taking the human out of the loop from in the cockpit, at least with current technology. I think there's just too much sensory processing that happens real time in the environment. And that comes with some errors too. I mean, you induce errors with that. And at some point you're asking yourself, everything you're gaining by having the person back stateside operating the system, what are you losing downrange? So,
do you miss it? How are you doing being done?
That's funny. I've talked to a few people about that. I generally don't miss it, and I really enjoyed what I was doing up until the very end. I was teaching at the schoolhouse. Most people don't get to fly straight through for 20 years or finish up flying, and I was able to do so. So I'm very, very fortunate in that regard. I enjoyed my job, but it was just time to move on. I don't really miss it. I miss the people and the camaraderie. I don't have that in my current job. Like I'm an airline pilot now, and I enjoy my coworkers, men and women I work with, but there's the camaraderie that's definitely absent. Even if they were in the military previously too, like we might go to Applebee's on a layover, and then, you know, once we're back home, high five and never see that person again. And that's something that's totally different from the Air Force. So I do miss that. I miss the camaraderie. I enjoy the flying, and I'm sure Top Gun sequel doesn't cover this either. And it's probably like making a really popular podcast. There's probably, you know, minimum 30 man hours going into the production of it for the 1 hour of airtime. Under 200.
100, 200 easy.
Yeah, that's just for the
500
intro.
sometimes. Yeah.
And it's a great intro. It's a great intro.
It's just to groom the mustache.
It's the same thing flying fighter jets. Yeah, I might fly 3, 4, 5 days a week, but just the sheer amount of overhead that goes into it, just to fly a 1.5 hour mission, it's a lot, and you spend the overwhelming majority of your time preparing for it, talking about what you're going to go do, doing it, and then talking about how you did and what you're going to do next time. And especially in the schoolhouse environment where I was training brand new F-16 pilots, you have very fixed syllabus requirements and training objectives, and so you're always debriefing to those specifically. And I enjoyed all of that, but yeah, for every, I don't know, 20 years in the Air Force, I did 2 years non-flying on loan to the U.S. Army early on, and in that amount of time, I got 1,800 F-16 hours.
Wow.
So that's not a lot. I think the highest time F-16 pilot was in the Air National Guard, and that's well north of 6,000. Getting to 2,000 is a pretty good milestone, and I would say most people don't get to that. And I was close, but it just didn't happen. So yeah, after 20 years, a good year would have been 200 hours in a really good year. So
man,
it's and I don't miss that part of it.
When I watch the original Top Gun, I figure, all right, let me see. Tom Cruise went in the air, 6, 7 times in that movie. And 2/7 of the time, the flight ended with a jet wash catastrophe. So is it safe to say that jet wash happens about 2/7 of flights?
That's a lot. No.
That's a lot.
Jet wash. Yeah, you fly through, especially when you're doing air-to-air maneuvers. It's like hitting a speed bump in your car too fast, but that's about it. And never flown an F-14, so I can't speak to the dynamics of that. But it never sent me into a flat spin out to sea in my F-16. Or put me out of control. So maybe the F-14 is just more susceptible to that, but no, that's not particularly a threat.
So I guess it makes sense to kind of land the plane with a question about the movie here. So what are you most excited about to see in this sequel, Top Gun Maverick? Because you haven't seen it yet. So what are you hoping to see?
I just love the flying scenes from the trailers and from the first one. Was cool. I would say the first Top Gun was a little bit light on storyline, and that's okay. I mean, it obviously had the plot that carried through. But the flying scenes, from what I've seen about the trailer, it looks nice. Some nice low-level flying through some mountain valleys and ridge crossings, going upside down, and I think that might inspire me and make me miss it a little bit. So looking forward to that. And by all accounts, the storyline is really good, too. So I'm prepared to have my expectations exceeded.
That's awesome, man. Last question. Is there a mountain valley like course that you train on? It's called like Jedi Pass or something like that. Like, does this place exist? Because I've seen it in the trailer. Not going to tell you about the movie, but is this a thing?
I've heard from a friend of mine that was separately doing an F-16 exercise up off of Whidbey Island during the filming that they were using a low level up in the Pacific Northwest. By low level, it's what they call specifically a military training route, which is FAA terminology for special use airspace that's been designated as a training corridor for fast-flying, low-altitude military aircraft. And they're checkered all across the United States. And it's not something that you have to stay out of if you're a Cessna pilot. It's not restricted airspace. It's just charted that, hey, there might be fast-moving jets here.
Yeah, I mean, you'd notice.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being like a 172 pilot applying carb heat and like going through your checklist and all of a sudden Just straight by you. That'd be awesome.
So there are some great low-level routes in the United States and worldwide. I don't know about any where they filmed that. Like I heard it was in the Pacific Northwest or at least some of it. Out in California by China Lake, there's Star Wars Canyon, and I don't know the name of the actual low-level route. And that's a real thing. A lot of jets from either Nellis Air Force Base outside of Las Vegas for the Air Force.
Why would they not call that Beggar's Canyon? I feel like they missed out. Beggar's Canyon or the Trench Run?
They
They
could.
have better options there.
And China Lake, and you get some a lot of Navy aircraft will use it. Star Wars Canyon, and you get a lot of plane spotters. Some amateur and professional photographers will go stand on the edge of that just to watch planes rip through the canyon below them. I haven't flown that one, unfortunately. My favorite low-level route is in Alaska, and I'm sure it has a name too. They have names like VR 209 and IR 1231. It's all very bureaucratic, but call it the low level of justice is the one in Alaska.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, I got a proposal. I am constantly getting down your way to see family. I've missed you on the last two trips. Barely. We've given it a try. I think you should go watch Maverick. I think we should sit down somewhere for extended time over food and drink and catch up on life, talk shop about the show. And it would just be, it's been really fun just hearing about your adventures and like, I don't know who else I would talk to at this point where it's like, dang, I haven't talked to them since we were kids, but I really like that person. So it's kind of fun, like the time capsule. So,
wow.
Well, that would be a blast. And also, if you have the chance, please greet your family for me. Your house was an important part of my childhood. I was always made to feel so welcome, and appreciate your brother and your folks. And you guys opened up your place to me and my brother, and that always meant a lot. That's a really fond set of memories for me.
Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. That's nice to hear. So, well, it's good to catch up with you.
Hey, it was good
Right
to
on,
meet
brother.
you, Pete. Thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate it.
Right on, man.
Yeah, you bet. Talk to you later.
Final word, Destin Sandlin, Top Gun Maverick.
Go see it, and yeah, I love it. Makes me think about a lot of stuff. Some of it technical, but I really like your take on it. Most of it makes me feel things in the heart. And I just really liked that we had a movie where we could just all be excited that we're Americans and we care about getting something right as a team. I just really like that movie, and I'm really glad that it exists right now.
This felt different than other things I've seen of late, and I loved it. I do not need my entertainment to align with my every preference or view of the world, and no movie ever would anyway. That said, I love that this show said, let's be entertaining, let's make you think about yourself, let's make you laugh a little bit, let's make you think about love, let's have some fun, and they delivered. It was just magnificent.
It was refreshing to have a movie not lecture at me.
Yeah.
This is going to be fun, and you're going to love it. The stakes are high. It's going to pay off, or maybe not. But, yeah, just try to get better from where you're at. I loved it. I thought it was great. This is a good date night movie, by the way.
Well played.
I'm sure
I think we're going to go see it again at it's at the drive-in theater here. We have one of those. I'm going to go try it out.
I don't know, but I think my mustache kind of helped the date night thing. Yeah.
I'm looking at your mustache right now, and I don't want this to come off weird, but yeah, I think it did.
Danger zone. I went to the danger zone.
Bum, 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 bum.
It's easier with a
I like
mustache.
the way they use the